So good afternoon. I already told before to my colleagues, it's a bit like Groundhog Day film, because many of us have been here 4 years ago, and it started also with Plage, but with Heinz Stockinger. Good to see you. So my name is Dörte Fouquet. I'm here as a lawyer, as partner of counsel of a German law firm, Becker Büttner Held, and I am working in the field of energy law and transition from nuclear since 1986, when I was a civil servant in Hamburg when Chernobyl happened. And it was the 1st of May that we would at that time traditionally go for our Labor Day manifestations, and we got some nice rain showers, and the day after we found out it came from Chernobyl also. So since that marked my way. And also questions of the Euratom Treaty and the reform, like you said before, it seems to be a never-ending story, and the dinosaur is a very good example. But it's also like in German we say Krake, a tentacle who has all its branches, and I will try to go into that also a little bit in this. Can I do it myself, or you do it? No, I can do it if it's working. Yeah, we can because I can go through faster. Thank you. So this is not so interesting. Yeah. Voila. So what I want to do today is to look a little bit what has happened. I also refer, but I won't go into details, into the questions of the recent developments of under the sustainable finance issues, and I think this needs new batteries. Voila. Maybe I have to ask you. Yeah, okay. So what we all know and see at the moment, and since many years actually, is that we have a tsunami of financial risks for all those countries who do have still nuclear power plants. They have ailing nuclear situations, and we see that we need clear rules on risk sharing and on financing sharing. You know, the German phase out policy, it's pretty expensive for the German populations for generations to come, but at least it is it has been established, and there is a way out, even though we take a lot of time to find final storage and so forth. We can continue. This is just to give an example how many reactors have to be dismantled and how are still in operation. I come back to that. We can continue. Again, I think this is the wrong presentation, by the way. It's not the right presentation. I had sent it by email. Okay, I do it my way. I will put it up next to me. No, I take it next to me. It's not a problem at all. What I want to tell you is that we have current important, this PowerPoint sign here, important barriers, and we have opportunities. What I am very disappointed about is that we had, despite Corona, but with all delays on Corona, we had a conference on the future of Europe, which was a process involving all member states, population in all member states, how to reform Europe. And in the beginning, it was the talk about the treaties. But the end of the process, and we had the plenary discussion in Strasbourg with a big hullabaloo in April of this year, they had a consensus of 300 action points, what has to be done to modernize Europe. None of that is on Euratom. And I have also to say that in all respect, and I'm working a lot for the Austrian government, especially for the German government, others, I'm fairly disappointed that that again has been fallen under the carpet. Because now we have an agenda of 300 action items which the Commission has to take up in order to reform Europe, but only the Union Treaty. And again, not the Euratom Treaty. So it's again a very bad way. It got lost. Then we have at the moment the wishful thinking of a renaissance of nuclear in Europe. And that again has several tentacles embracing us and the politics. The myth of climate protection via nuclear. I think we can listen to Michael Schneider for 10 minutes and he can give you all the figures why it's how many nuclear power plants per day you would have to issue new in order to have any effect on climate measures. And then we have a new alliance created on the European level, high level, with the blessing of our president, Ms. von der Leyen and Bill Gates. And that is a breakthrough, the Breakthrough Foundation, which poured billions into a fund where the Commission had to cover up the responding money to do climate protection projects. But Bill Gates has his money in small nuclear reactor technology. And he and his foundation is co-responsible to decide what projects under this money will be, under this program will be financed. So we heard about the sneaking in of nuclear and fossil gas in the taxonomy via the second delegated act. It's good we have Austria again. I think between an Austrian and the non-nuclear stance, there's not even a piece of paper fitting. So I'm very happy. I heard rumors that young people also seems to be taken by the climate thing, but we have Plage and others to take control of that. But Austria goes on annulment, and also there is one member of the European Parliament, a single member of the European Parliament, René Repasi, a social democrat from Germany, who filed also an annulment plea with 4 professors of law, including myself, against the Commission on the Taxonomy Delegated Act. And we discussed it, he's focusing not on the wrong way, how it has been, but on the way to exclude the legislator in the whole process. And the problem is the standing. We have no time to go into that, but we work hard on that. Then we have, some weeks ago, it was presented in Berlin, the World New Nuclear Industry Status Report from 2022. Nuclear share dropped worldwide below 10% now. We have the IAEA statistics, so the International Atomic Energy Authority agency, show a peak in officially operating reactors, both in terms of numbers, 49, and capacity in comparison to previous years. And there are now for IAEA 437 reactors in operation. So the trend is downward, but the money for them is upward. We have 98 startups worldwide, many in China, and we have 105 closures. We have the overall EU dependency from Russia and Kazakhstan for the ores and the material, also the material for the nuclear build, Rosatom as a catchword. So that is what I wanted to say in the beginning. We could go now back to the presentation, because then one thing in before we have the France ailing nuclear fleet, which is a very, very difficult thing we face at the moment in the European electricity market. The aggression of Russia against Ukraine is one awful and important factor for rise in electricity prices in the European Union. The failure of more than half of the French nuclear park over months and with no end in sight made France largely a net electricity importer country, especially from Germany and Belgium, because they still have no sufficient interconnection with Spain. France was always opposing these interconnections and had only a little bit of modernization 10 years ago. And this all reflects heavily on the spot price for electricity. That's why we have so high electricity prices, not only because of Mr. Putin. So there is a paradoxon going on. Yesterday, I was as expert in the German Bundestag in the Committee for Environment, because Germany has put now or will put now its last remaining 3 nuclear power plants in the so-called stretch operation. That means they should be shut down next month, but they will continue with this legal provision. They may continue until April next year to come through the winter, because the French friends doesn't seem to be ready to get any more online. And but that means they will be still running on the same fuel rods. There is no new fuel rods coming in, so at least there will be no more additional waste from that plant. Okay, so now what do we do with Euratom? Now you can go up with the thing again, but I continue. We have said that when it was founded, the objectives have been so nicely and clearly illustrated that I don't need to talk about that. We have the promotion trap, which was also you can continue a little bit. Then you see. I can also try. Maybe it's. We have the non-proliferation, which is an issue which Euratom is not really able to safeguard against nuclear, let's say, disappropriation. And we have the non-democratic approach. The parliament can only give an opinion, is heard, but cannot vote. All regulations you have on nuclear are council regulations. So we can continue. We have no liability executed under Euratom. We do have an article in Euratom which could have made an own European Euratom insurance liability mechanism, but it has never been done. We do have we have a patchwork of nuclear liability treaties. That is the Paris Convention, the Vienna Convention, the Brussels additional conventions, but they all, and it depends where you come from, under which country you are, which liability regime is attached to your country. There are only Austria, which is not subject to any of these, but has its own liability law, and Luxembourg. We can continue. Yeah, this is the insurance never really used, so we can continue. The patchwork, I talked about it. We can go on. Also, we can continue, because you can read that at home. I want to come to how can we get out of it. Continue. Yeah, undemocratic behavior, as I said, also that we can leave behind already. We have several reform attempts had in the past, and they were so that for the credit of former reform processes, so under the Lisbon and the Nice processes, there were attempts to overhaul the Euratom Treaty. There was a lot of discussion. You can read it later. There were also a lot of reports. We can continue. And there was also the question if one should not at least put a sunset clause under the Euratom Treaty. That was discussed in the Intergovernmental Conference at that time, but in the end it was rejected. The president of this conference, which is the body to prepare any constitutional change under European Treaty, was Giscard d'Estaing, so a Frenchman. So you can be sure that nothing came out of it. And he had a very tricky thing, which we can learn today. He was not completely wrong saying that the mandate given by this treaty, to this body, was not clear enough concerning Euratom. So he got us there, if you want. I was already working in that field at that time. Unfortunately, we can continue. So there was a missed chance, and also, and then at least let's say the nuclear says, okay, maybe we can just combine it all, and then the anti-nuclear movement in the parliament and so said, no, wait a minute. If we cannot reform it, we leave it better as a standalone treaty. It has two sides, this medal. But I think it's better to at least to identify where the dinosaur is sitting. So we continue, please. Even the European Commission had at that time issued a paper under the name of Penelope. Don't ask me why Penelope. Forgot it. that the Commission said a lot can be slimmed down you can really get out a lot of things which are specifically regulated in the ordinary treaty and secondary legislation. Because Euratom is only a special treaty when it has something which is not already established in our general treaty. So there were some ways around. So that's why, in principle, state aid, which is regulated under the treaty, state aid scrutiny has also to be done for nuclear. The problem is only that the reasoning to rectify state aid is then taken at the moment, since Hinkley Point decision, out of Euratom, and is said it's a common interest because it's a European treaty all member states have adhered to. So we can continue. So it's Penelope paper, you can read it, it's gone. We have to continue for the sake of time. I know my chairman here. So we have, I only wanted to show you, the people have already gone chapter by chapter and article by article. So there is a lot of groundwork one could use if one restarts such a process. We can continue. And then there were declarations like this declaration. We wish to make the following recommendations. There were several members of the convention in 2003. And please continue. But as I said in the beginning, it didn't work. What was interesting, and you can still see it if you look into the official journal of the European Union, there were declarations annexed to the final act of signing of the Treaty of Lisbon in 2007, because it takes some time, 2004, then it went to the parliament and so forth. And that Germany, Ireland, Hungary, Austria, and Sweden were not happy that Euratom was not, so Hungary at that time, but it was a different Hungary at that time also. We thought that Brexit may have been the right moment to rekindle this initiative, but it has not been done. We can continue. So for the sake of time, I want to say we have now Article 106A in the Euratom Treaty, which is referring to articles in our general treaty and including those articles how to enter and how to leave, or how to change a treaty. And this is this Article 106, and he refers to the treaty provisions. And there's one thing, please note, there's written that for Article 48, 2 to 5 are applicable also for Euratom changes, to make it very short. Not Article 48.1, for example, and that is the simplified procedure to change a treaty. That has not been done. So if you want to change Euratom, you can do it. I will now tell you without the PowerPoint how it can be done. You have to you have to go through the whole intergovernmental conference procedure. Whereas, for example, if 48.1 for simple things could have been applicable, I would say we could have had in the Council the proposal to do the simplified reform procedure and to install only one article in the current treaty as a first step, and that's a sunset clause. In the European Coal and Steel Treaty, which came out just before 57, that was the first European treaty we had, because at that time we were all hungry for steel and coal, and there was still not so long after the war, and the Rhine area was still, let's say, coordinated by France and Germany for many years. So there was this, we want to have a single unit buying our minerals. That was the idea. That is part of the idea of Euratom also in the beginning. But they put a 50-year sunset into it. And that has been done. We can even learn from that sunset and apply it to the handling of a Euratom phasing out. Since we can continue, since we know you can continue, all this is on Brexit. I had taken that out. So we have now the ordinary revision procedure. And we can continue. That means a member state, the Commission, or the European Parliament can submit a proposal for treaty change to the Council, which in turn presents it to the European Council. So meaning the European Parliament would say, even though the Parliament has no standing under Euratom, thanks to this link from Euratom to the General Treaty, in this case, the Parliament could ask for such a proposal. That goes then to the Energy Council, and then the Energy Council has to represent it to the General, also the Council of Head of States, and EIB financing. So if a majority of member states in the Council are in favor of examining the proposal for treaty change, the President of the European Council convenes a convention. And then before that, Parliament and Commission are consulted. The convention is always set as a very interesting thing because there are representatives of national parliaments, heads of states or governments, MEPs and the European Commission to discuss draft treaty changes. In the end, they have a recommendation which they have to adopt by consensus, and that goes then to the Intergovernmental Conference. The Intergovernmental Conference is again a body convened by the President of the European Council, and this decides changes only unanimously. You can continue. Yep. So we continue for the sake of time. Yeah, I have. This is interesting to see through. I have gone through that. There is even in English and in German, there is my legal opinion from Minister Gewessela from almost 2 years ago now, where in the second part you have all these pathways, even a new wording of the Euratom Treaty, and the biggest thing would be to introduce a liability regime also into the treaty, and to have a real liability a la Austria in that treaty would be very interesting. So we can now think about how nice the world could look, but how do we come to unanimity? So then we can say we never get rid of that treaty unless we can get France on our side. And there might be a way if we would do things we have done similarly for the phasing out of coal. The just transition coal, you know, it's the big finance package for former or current coal regions in Europe. If we do a just transition old nuclear, because the problem, in my view, why people are clinging to Euratom is that all the countries and all the companies who are involved in nuclear have not sufficient money to dismantle correctly. Frankly, for Central and Eastern European Union countries, I think they have been left alone too long also. One has to say that. Because in former times, before we had the wall coming down, it was a state concern, and it was just a state company, and they never put money aside for dismantling. France has put money aside, but not enough. Germany also never had enough aside. So my quest is, if countries, and I have spoken with the Austrian government also several times, the German government I'm speaking now, we have to convene a club of willing people to at least start this ordinary council plea, we want to reform. There we only need a simple majority. And if you look countries after Brexit, could be just possible. If you speak before with countries like Slovakia, like Czech Republic, like France also, and say, let us reform it, but we don't let you stay under the rain when it comes to burden sharing for the old legacy. And if they one day will, very frankly, be ready really to open Flamanville, yeah, I'm not sure they will, but that's the only way out. So if you ask me, should we give up? I would say no, because as I said, this aging of the nuclear power park worldwide and in Europe is helping us, that they need to wake up to reality that neither EDF nor ČEZ nor has any money for that. we can go back in discussion on the nitty-bitty of the article.
So we'll wait for the panel discussion and then we'll sort out what we should do. So now it's 5 minutes past 3, so it's time for William Bergthaler to say something. At 15:40 we have time, but not now.
Dorte, thank you for this excellent presentation. By the way, I'm Niels Henrik Hoge from NOAH, Friends of the Earth, Denmark. Just a short question that I could imagine would be repeated perhaps during the panel debate. The newly elected Swedish government has said that they will guarantee 400 billion Swedish kroner in loans, and the objective is to revitalize nuclear power in Sweden, especially in southern Sweden and possibly at Barsebäck, also near the Danish border. It is my impression that these loan guarantees would be illegal if it was not for the Euratom Treaty, because it would represent competition distortion, and obviously such a massive buildup of nuclear power in southern Sweden would have also consequences for deployment of renewables in Denmark and possibly endanger the green energy transition in large parts of Scandinavia. So is this true that without the Euratom Treaty, these massive loan guarantees by the Swedish government would be illegal?
Yeah. When without the Euratom Treaty, we would have the scrutiny under the European competition law rules, which is still possible. So I would also go against that, even knowing Hinkley Point has happened, because there's still some scrutiny the Commission must do. And maybe we were, or before, one was a bit too blue-eyed to look into the scrutiny process a bit more closely, because we thought it's unthinkable the European Court would say there is a common interest when so many have no nuclear. But it's more difficult because we have now the Hinkley Point decision of the European Court, but it's not impossible. The only way out I see again is quite practical. I think in Germany at least it was said that Uniper, who is owning the interest in Barsebäck, is not interested in running ever a nuclear power plant there. So it's what I said yesterday in the Deutsche Bundestag when the CDU-CSU was asking for, they had a contra law against the stretching law. So the last month we closed down in April. They want to have running the nuclear power plants, the 3 ones, 2 more years with the possibility of again 2 more years. And then I said in my verdict, yeah, but the nuclear power plant operators have already said, oh, we don't want to operate that. So who is the operator?